Have you ever been in a situation where you have used an app or a product and you are so delighted with the user experience that you question yourself, who would have thought of this? Who would have designed and conceptualized this product? Well, today I am fortunate enough to sit with one of such brilliant product managers from Silicon Valley. Min Liu have been a product designer for wonderful Fortune 500 companies. She has instructed the course Entrepreneurship and Design at Stanford. And most importantly, she is an entrepreneur herself. Min, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Snehal, and it's great to be reunited with you.
Absolutely, and it's always fun to cherish our old memories and partnership back again.
Definitely.
So, Min, one of the main reasons why I have invited you on this show today is because I have probably not come across a product manager who is so deeply invested in building products and who is just challenging the status quo of what is going to happen next. And that is one of the main reasons why I have invited you on the show today. You know what it takes to make a product amazing. So, if I have to start off with something simple yet an extensive question, what makes a product great?
Yeah, that's a simple and great question to ask, Snehal. I would say that what makes a product great is one in which it really hits the needs of your users, both in it could be in a delightful way or in a way that where you realize that after using the product, you wouldn't imagine a world in which the product couldn't have existed in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So to make a really great product, something that sticks and that is truly resonant with users, it first has to really meet the user's needs. And that is the number one criteria for a great product.
Excellent. I know you mentioned that one of the fronts that we want to make sure is that we delight the user. And your expertise has always been implementing design thinking when building products, having a more human centric design towards it. So, if I have to ask you, can you elaborate what is design thinking and how do we go about implementing that in our products?
Yes. So if I had a religion that I really respected, design thinking would be my religion. Design thinking is really a product development process that focuses on the human. So it's also called human-centered design. I think that there are multiple ways to build a product. Many founders think about, they dream up what they want to build and then they build it. And then oftentimes it works and oftentimes it doesn't. And then there are also other ways, you look for a business opportunity, you identify the total addressable market for what you could capture, and then you build a product based on that. The way that I really love building products is really based on human-centered needs. So as part of design thinking, one of the most important elements is going out into the world and talking to users and understanding, what's hard for them, what are their basic needs. If we're thinking about building a meditation product, how can we follow our users through the course of their day to understand their highs and lows, to really have empathy and to understand what is it that we're really building. So at the end of the day, human-centered design process, or rather we call it design thinking, is really focused on understanding our users first before we start ideating and before we start really putting pen to paper or starting coding. It's really about understanding what our users' needs are and then focusing on ideas. So that to me is really what makes human-centered design special.
Brilliant. I mean, I love the way you have explained the simplicity of having human centered products. Although, one of the things that I have noticed and observed talking to other product managers and designers out there, many of them say that sometimes users don't even know what they need. And we have to sell a story to them. We have to tell them what they want. And that is how we should be focusing our target audience. What do you think of that?
That's true. One of the mantras I've heard of design thinking is that design thinking is easy to learn, but it's hard to master. And I think what you just said really hits the nail on the head, which is that, in order to really truly understand your users, it doesn't happen overnight. it's, you have to really be in that user's shoes over time. And one way to get that right is to be provocative around trying out different ideas that test the hypotheses that you have about what are the exact, what type of products would tailor to the needs of that specific user. So, and it's not an easy process. As so many founders have tried, so many solutions in all different types of markets, but only a small percentage of founders, of entrepreneurs, are actually successful. And the reason is really around product market fit. And more specifically, it's around product user fit, right? And product user fit is really around making sure that you are full in one with what the user really needs. And that process is really, really hard. Okay. So when I go back and say, it's super important to understand your users, that in itself is both an art and a science.
Lovely. And I think one of the important parts of understanding users is somehow also figure out what are we going to deliver them that will make sure that they use our product at regular basis. And which brings me to one of the interesting concepts of design patterns, which we call the persuasive design pattern. So can you explain to us, man, like what is persuasive design pattern that is used when building products or apps?
Yeah, so persuasive design is one part of human psychology, I would say. It comes from psychology, which is to really understand the triggers for human behavior and to figure out how to build products that fit the needs or that essentially create a response that create a desired response from your users. So, products that we use today, that many of us use today, Facebook, Instagram, these are products in which the teams that have been building them have a very good understanding of how to trigger users so that they respond to the app and that they come back over and over again. And that is what I would say is persuasive technology.
Lovely. And yeah, I think it is no surprise that they have cracked it. All these big companies have figured out how to make sure that our attention is on that device or on that product. Although I have always wondered, and it is very important to understand, what are some qualitative or ethical impacts of such design patterns?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I would say that I would say that's actually a part that's missing in product development right now for many companies. And that is, I go back to many years ago when I was a computer science student, that one of the most important classes that I took was ethics and engineering. And we talked about Second Life and, what are the ethical implications of one avatar physically abusing another avatar, and should that have legal consequences? So having, these are not necessarily questions that technology companies really explore in depth today. I think the focus has been really around improving metrics, business metrics, making sure that, the product is persuasive enough, and that users are coming back day in and day out. But the part that I think is really missing and that we really need to incorporate into how we develop products is more of a qualitative understanding of the long-term impacts that the most prevalent products that we use today, be it physical or digital, have on our lives and have as like a long-term impact on the lives of users like yourselves today and users around the world.
It's very interesting. You mentioned long-term impact. Can you give an example in how does one figure out, like say for example, if I'm an engineer, I'm developing a product where my main focus and goal is to make sure that I meet my metric. I am not sure what are some future implications that are going to be. The product manager who designed the like button at Facebook, I'm pretty sure he did not even expect that likes will become a social norm of acceptability in the society. So I think a question for you is that what can we do about it, and how can we understand those long-term impacts?
It's a great question. I would say number one is, companies today really look at metrics to determine their success. It's the metrics for a product, which roll up into the metrics for the entire company, which becomes metrics or becomes numbers that are reported to Wall Street to determine the success of that company.
Yes.
So those metrics are actually quite short term. They're on a quarter to quarter basis, and then they roll up into annual. But really, starting from core product development, when we look at metrics for say a popular product today, like Instagram, one of the metrics is daily active users. Another metric is likes. Another metric is posts. But what are the question is, what are the longer term metrics that a product manager or a product development team can develop to really look at impact, positive impact, negative impact that this product can have over time? And those include, for example, surveys. A survey of, say, even if it's just like 0.01% of the population of Instagram users, that will actually give you a reading of, like, number one is how many what is the influence that Instagram has had on you and your relationships with your family. And those can be yes or no questions. You can formulate those into yes or no questions, so they're easier to roll back into a form of a metric. But really to capture, retention. If you can capture, for example, the number of guests or the number of users that are on Instagram today, and then ask them in the future, would you recommend Instagram to a friend? Or what are the negative impacts that Instagram has had on you in your life? And with those questions, I think you would start to uncover that there's much more than the daily active user metric that you're really right now as a company is really looking at. So the fact that those metrics are hard to capture does not mean that it's not important. And I think that's the part that's been hard for tech companies, is that they have not been able to capture the longer term metrics to really fully evaluate the longer term impacts of products, which at the end is what goes into building a great product, is that you have a wow factor. You really need the product. And sometimes if we're only looking at short term metrics, the users may not use our products for the longer term.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think that's such a well said statement, that don't go for the sprints, go for the marathon. Look for the longer things, and that is what is at the end of the day going to improve your product in long term fold. Like, we have to look for passive benefits when using your product. I think it's a very well said example. So now I have two follow-up questions which are kind of related to this beautiful analogy. So one is that when products are getting developed, I feel there are two sets of people who are playing a role. One is the leadership group, who define these business models and metrics, and another ones are the execution team that make sure that I have to build this product. So of course, I think we'll go ahead and talk about the business models and the leadership. But is there something that the execution team, a lower level team, can also start thinking when building such products?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would say that some of the best run companies I've worked at, and obviously the company we worked at together, Snehal, had a great leadership team that empowered the execution teams to really build a product that they really believed in, and that was able to really leverage the talents of the execution teams. And those are, in my mind, what are the best companies around. So I think number one is aligning on values. The leaders of a company need to really inspire everyone within the company and outside of the company on the vision, on what it is that really, what is the true meaning of having that company be in existence. And once those leaders have been able to rally the entire team and the entire company around that vision, then it's around building the teams to make that happen, to really build that vision and make that vision a reality. So that's where I would say that, the teams that are working on the critical products for any company really play a critical role. And it's really, I really believe in having leaders at every level.
Mm.
And so to be part of a team that is truly invested in the product, believes in the vision, it's an inclusive team that is able to have everyone, have a say and to be able to contribute their thoughts. Not to at the end build a consensus-driven product, but one in which the opinions and thoughts and data, they're all heard and then they're all factored into the decision-making process. Those are ultimately the best products that are built.
True, absolutely. Now, one question that came up when you talked of vision is that here's something that I've observed is that when companies start off at their early stages, the seed funding, Series A, Series B, the vision of the companies are extremely strong and crystal clear. As the company evolves and grows over time, visions tend to get blurry. Visions tend to get influenced by, I don't know, as you said, Wall Street or the investors or other sort of people who have their personal interest in that. So how can a company leadership make sure that the vision is rock solid?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Snehal. So in thinking about some of the most resilient companies that have stuck around, looking back, Coca-Cola or thinking about not non-traditional companies like even an ice cream company in San Francisco, right, that have been around for a long time, or thinking about large corporations, technology companies that have really stood the test of time. I would say that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to poke holes into a company. They're going to question the CEO, they're going to question the teams, they're going to question the leaders, they're going to question the products. But really, I would say that at the end of the day, the companies that have really been successful are the ones that have that vision, and they've been able to really address the questions based on how good the vision is and the principles that have been developed following that vision that have also created the lasting company as a result of that vision. That they really stand the test of time, because it's not just the founder or the CEO that is able to advocate for the company, but then knowing a great leader, they're able to instill that vision and the principles, the values of that company with the rest of that team, who are then able to also advocate for the purpose of that one company. So I would say that, at the end of the day, a great company is viral, and it's viral within the teams, and everybody starts to believe in it. And then that really is what truly is the test of time, is that the founder becomes the CEO, is able to really, rally the troops. And the troops being, when one employee retires, there will be another employee that'll come and will have the same championship for that vision over time, and that's really what stands the test of time for a great company.
Lovely. So going back to our business model situation that we were talking about, that companies are building day in, day out, right? So it's no surprise that companies' business model these days are primarily driven for financial gains. That's an elephant that most of the time we can address in the room. The thing is that in pursuit of that, companies are constantly trying to figure out how to grab users' attention for the longest time, how to make sure that the user uses our product for the longest time. The hook model, the dopamine effect, the random reward, and many such fancy technologies and terms are implemented when building such products. So, do you see a fundamental problem with the way these business models are?
I mean, yes, absolutely. I would say that developing a business based on, addressing and understanding, users' triggers, I think is really it's short-sighted, right? Because at the end of the day, users are smart.
Mm-hmm.
They know when you've got them, right? They know when they've spent too much time on an app, or they know over time when they've liked too many things or posted too many things, how gross they feel at the end of the day because they just spent all their time on the app.
Uh-huh.
That's not a great experience for your users, right? So I would say that at the end of the day, your users are your family members, your coworkers, they're people, and really truly understanding their deep needs and what would really help them have a delightful day or really fill their need with a product that doesn't exist yet. Like that's what makes great products special and lasting over time. So it really has to come from the intent of what you're building. So if your intent is to truly solve guest problems and to create a delightful experience, then that is going to last a product for a long time.
Mm.
And that intention has to be operationalized within the team and within an entire company so that the product at the end of the day is one that guests will really trust or users will really trust.
Lovely. I mean, the reason why I brought this up because I think recently I watched the documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And there, like some brilliant designers, engineers, and product managers have uncovered the truth on how users are actually being hooked onto these small little machine learning models and a lot of nitty details that we don't even realize that we are getting onto this. So a question for you, Min. Does this scare you?
Oh, I think it's very scary. Absolutely scary to know that the products that you're using are trying to, at the end of the day, have an ulterior motive.
What do you think would be some long-term side effects of the way we are building products today?
Well, I think we're seeing the effect of that now, right? We're
Hmm.
seeing that being online for too long or having children who are using applications, that may not be suitable for them, you see adverse effects in their behaviors, and that the lack of interaction
Hmm.
creates creates consequences that would have a psychological impact to them, and farther down the road. So that's happening. I think the antidote for that is ensuring that we're not building solely on short-term outcomes,
Hmm.
is that we really incorporate the longer term considerations for, and that goes for companies too. It's like, can a company be around for a year? Can a company be around for 10 years, for
Hmm.
100 years? And I think that many times, because public companies in particular are tied to Wall Street, that they think on a quarterly or an annually basis, but it's hard to look ahead.
Yeah.
So we have to create the right incentives for companies to be successful. And I believe that an institutional change is needed in order for Wall Street to look 10 years down the road,
Hmm.
not just a quarter down the road, to create those incentives so that CEOs and board members of a company will be able to influence the vision, the longer term vision of that company, so that we can build better products over time. Now, there are these kind of few companies that are rebels,
Hmm.
that whose CEOs and founders and board members have the best interest of the company in mind. And despite what Wall Street says, or despite what outsiders or criticism comes their way, they really believe in the value
Hmm.
that they're building, and they really believe in the vision of the company. And those are the companies that I believe are truly special.
Interesting, interesting. And as you mentioned, right, that once we are in the long game, once it starts from Wall Street to CEOs, the leadership, the business models, if it comes from top to bottom, there'll be so many passive benefits that we cannot even foresee. If we are in a longer game, we won't be worried about these quarterly layoffs or some small little effects that we as team members have to take on, I think, year to year basis, right? Because Now the game is a bigger thing. Now the metrics are different and our vision is different. It's much more longer term. So I definitely see a lot of positive passive benefits that we might not foresee right now, but can definitely be implemented once we start thinking in that way.
Absolutely. We absolutely get it. Yep.
Lovely, lovely. So now here's a point blank question to you, man. What can we do? I think one thing you definitely covered is the metric part, right? What can we do to make sure that we are making products that actually make the world a better place? I know we hear this sentence a lot, making world a better place, but what can we do that we can start going in that direction?
Yes, I have one answer, which is to get out of the building and to really talk to your users and to really understand their underlying needs and motivations. I would say that, going back to the human-centered design process, the number one thing that I was taught and early on was to talk to your users and really understand their deep-seated needs. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're building something to address a need or a desire for our users. Mm-hmm. And if we have that at the core of how we build, I think we're going to be at a much better place.
Lovely. I 100% agree on that statement that you just made. So, Min, as you know, coming to the last segment of this interview, if I have to ask you, if you have to summarize and sum it up, what will be your top 3 recommendations that we should keep in mind to build better products?
All right, top 3 from me. Number 1, and I'll keep repeating this, which is to really know your users and to talk to them. Okay. I think that's one of the best ways to build a great product. Number 2 is often forgotten but critical, which is that great teams build great products and not the other way around. So make sure that the team that you're building with is diverse. It has representation from cross-functional team members, including design, engineering, product, data science, research, to make sure that the product that you're building is well-rounded and that various considerations have been taken in the product development process. Mm-hmm. The first and the last thing I would say is make sure to have fun in this process. It's this is not meant to be a dreadful task. Building a product is supposed to be really exciting. It's a roller coaster ride, and got to embrace the adventure and make sure that around even tough turns that there's always, at the end of the day, the goal of building a great product for your users.